Hi, everyone. Welcome to Guardian Recovery. I am your host, Kevin Michaelazik. Thank you all for tuning in. I am extremely excited about this week's guest, Mr. Patrick Balsley. He was one of the original Guardian employees at Immersion Recovery Center and has an unbelievable story of recovery. He's become one of my closest and dearest friends. I love to bust his chops. So this should be a good one, and I am going to bring him in. Patrick,
What's up,
how
man?
are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here. Ready to bust
You ready to be
right back?
You ready to be heckled?
Yeah, always, man. You take the punches.
Totally. You definitely are a good punching bag, but you give him back too. So
Yeah, you used to it, hanging around you.
yeah. So thank you. Thank you for making this work. I know you got a lot going on, and um, I'm grateful for you as a friend. You've become one of my closest friends over the last couple of years. So thank you for that. But I want to kind of ask you tell us something about you that people may not know. And I've gotten a variety of answers when I've asked this question. Kevin Creighton responded with reptiles. He likes reptiles.
That's weird.
That was my thoughts exactly. I mean, I was waiting for. I mean, Kev, I was waiting for this answer that only Kev could come up with, and he didn't disappoint. Reptiles.
Yeah. I don't know. I had a friend of mine that I grew up with. I was like at I think I was bowling or something, and somebody took a video of me like bowling a strike, and one of my old buddies that I grew up with commented on the post and said he is annoyingly good at useless things. that was it. I thought it was pretty funny, and it rings true. Like I can do a bunch of like stupid stuff that doesn't matter. Like I'm good at bowling. I can walk on my hands. I can juggle.
Really?
Yeah.
How come we've never had a bowling match?
Because I don't know.
I'm like,
you're gonna lose though.
Absolutely not. I come from a long line of bowlers.
Yeah, you look like you do. You still dress like one too.
No doubt. And I mean, I even got the old school like 70s collared bowling shirt. I got my bowling bag. You're barking up the wrong tree with that. We're gonna have to square off in North Carolina.
Yeah, no, and we will broadcast it live on Guardian Network Live for everyone to see, just like we will for our next one-on-one basketball game.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I
don't start with that.
What, the overrated?
Yeah, I am overrated. I'm freaking old as hell. I tried to cross this dude up on a game a couple weeks ago, like 3 times. It was like a dude that was older than me, like ripped me the first time. I got the ball back, tried to go by him again, sidestepped. I'm like half the speed that I think I am.
I suffer from the same problem. Like I'm taking it to the rack, and
yeah,
I think
I've always been like that.
No,
this is a new challenge for me.
No, I'm a legend. I'm a Durfee High School legend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on if they had it, I'd be a first ballot JV Hall of Famer. No doubt about it.
Probably.
I used to drop like 40 a game in JV. You can imagine that, right?
Thank God they didn't have, videos back then,
Because they would have gone viral.
It would be proof that never happened.
All right, so enough of the mental wrangling. I kind of want you to kind of go back to the beginning and kind of, just kind of tell us what it was like growing up and kind of what ultimately led you to turn to alcohol and drugs.
So I was like, I was doomed from the beginning. I got long lines of alcoholism and addiction on both sides of my family. My dad and his two brothers owned a wine shop and restaurant in Charlotte that this year will be their 50th year in business. So I grew up around the alcohol culture. It was part of our family's culture. The crazy thing is that it didn't look scary to me at all growing up. There wasn't any neglect or abuse or violence or anything like that. My family's culture was to work hard and play hard. So there wasn't alcohol use didn't look like a bad thing to me. Everybody handled it well. People weren't like falling around, like falling down drunk. It was they were in control of their drinking, and but it was part of our family's deal. And I was an only child, and spent a lot of time alone. My dad worked a lot, and I was kind of a loner. Spent a lot of time outside, like in the woods with some of the kids in the neighborhood, and I can trace my addiction all the way back to when I was 7 years old. And I tell this story every time I share. I didn't used to tell it, but now I do because I just don't care, and I think it's of value. I was swimming we were living in an apartment complex in Charlotte, and I was swimming in the swimming pool by myself one summer when the pool had just opened. It was a small apartment complex, and I was getting out of the pool, and I was climbing out, and I was holding on to the edge of the pool, and I felt the pool jet hit me, and realized that it felt good. So I stayed there for a little bit and had my first orgasm at 7 years old. And that was the first time that I found something that could not immediately, but something that was under my control that I knew I, could use to make me feel good. And, I got addicted to that dopamine hit. And it was something that I wasn't ashamed of because at that age, that wasn't talked about. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that, hey, if I do this, it makes me feel really good. And spent a lot of time in the pool. That's I'm sure you probably still do that, but but we spent a lot of time in the pool that summer, and I quickly found a way to use that to escape, to cope with anything that was going on at home. My childhood was pretty good. It was pretty normal. Played a lot of basketball. I went to private school. Had a ton of friends. I was one of the shortest and youngest kids in my grade. So that was kind of always an issue for me. I always felt like I had to compensate for that.
I can totally relate to that.
I know you can.
I just want to flash back real quick. Did the pool guy make your amends list?
No, he didn't, because at that time we're not even going to go there. There was no need for an amends at that point. No. Well,
you were contaminating his water.
No harm done. So I became a basketball junkie, pretty quickly. 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Spent a ton of time. It was something that I was good at, that I got a lot of attention for. That I excelled, even though I was smaller than a lot of people. It was something that I used to get attention, and I played basketball constantly. Like, my dad would drop me off at school an hour early. I'd go play in the gym with a bunch of people. After school, I'd go straight to the Y. Academics were always came second to my basketball. And then at about 10 years old, I discovered basketball cards, and there was there was a drugstore right by our apartment complex, and I was down there with my dad one day, and I think it was like 1990. It was David Robinson's rookie year, and I asked him to buy me a pack of these cards, and I vaguely remember knowing a little bit about it. I knew that the pack of cards cost $1, and that the David Robinson was worth like $10. And
what was his nickname? The General, right?
Admiral.
Admiral, that's it.
Yeah.
Wrong branch of the military.
It was like a scratch off ticket. I get this thing for $1. I open it up. There's no David Robinson. I'm bummed out. I need another one. Another one. Get the David Robinson. Boom. I need more David Robinsons now. But I knew that, I could spend $1 and there was a chance there was $10 in there. So what I didn't know is that, with the pool thing priming my brain for what's to come, then I'm introduced to these, cards and this obsession and compulsion around that, and the dopamine hit that I got when, I opened one with a good card in it. So to keep that addiction going, me and another little buddy of mine, we decided we were going to start autographing basketball cards, and we made up this story that his dad worked for the Hornets, and we would get to go into the locker room. And on Saturdays, we would take a stack of fake autographed cards that we signed, and we'd take them to the card shop at the local mall. And we would trade this dude a stack of cards, and he'd give us like $300-$400 worth of credit in the store. And we'd just, pick out boxes, and we'd sit in there and rip cards all day.
And he didn't know they were fake?
No, because I got really good at them. I can still do some of them. There was a price guide called Beckett, and every month they had one of the really good NBA players, and they would have like a fake, their signature on their picture. And I got really good at copying them. And, and we had pictures of other autographs of the Hornets players, and we just got really good at signing them. But I mean, it got to the point where I was selling them Michael Jordan ones. I can still do Michael Jordan's autograph.
Wow.
And I know that there's people in Charlotte that have autographed Jordan cards in their safety deposit boxes that I signed when I was 10. But I have, so this went on for a couple years. And through this, like after getting all these cards and opening them, I amassed this massive basketball card collection, and I ended up being on the front page of the Charlotte Observer's business page as a young entrepreneur. And it's like a picture of me sitting in this card store, like flipping through these cards. They didn't say anything about the fraudulent autographs, but
I mean, are you sure you're like an alcoholic? Because you've given me the pool and basketball cards. Like, you sure you just didn't get here by being lonely and kind of not having any friends?
Yeah, well, that too.
Jeez.
But yeah, dude, I was screwed from the rip. The first time I hit a cigarette and caught that buzz, it was over.
Yeah.
And that was next at 12, and 13 we started drinking. I was actually the last one in my friend group to start drinking beer. We had this house that we go to, fridge full of beer. Parents didn't know what was going on. And we're getting hammered. I mean, 2-3 beers. I weighed like 80 pounds. We just get all jammed up on the weekends. Had a freaking blast. And then the summer between my 8th and 9th grade year, my dad had knee surgery, and I was at his house, and this kid that lived in the neighborhood that was a couple years older than me came over and saw the bottle of Percocet on the windowsill. It was like 6 months old, and was like, "Hey, have you ever tried one of these?" And I had been drinking that day. It was like a Saturday afternoon. My dad was at work, and I popped 2 of these things. And after that, I was like, I want to feel like this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And this was 1996, before the whole opioid epidemic. There were pills in every cabinet.
Yeah, that was a big source of.
Yeah.
I was, Tomb Raider, like Laura Croft.
Yeah.
They used to call me the medicine cabinet raider.
That's catchy.
Trying to pitch it for a Netflix series, but I'm not getting anywhere.
Oh, that's terrible.
So this might not make it the broadcast. Just going.
Oh, so yeah, man. It got real bad real quick to the point where I was eating. I was taking 3 or 4 doses of opioids a day. Had no clue what the consequences of that were going to be. And I used them more like as like a performance enhancing drug. Like I wasn't using them to check out. Like I had a bunch of friends, big social network, played basketball. My life was great. And I'm using these things, but it like washed away all my fear. Because I felt great all the time.
Yeah.
And nobody really, some people probably knew what was going on. But it wasn't enough to raise any major red flags. So I kind of, so ninth grade, I get to basketball season, and I'm strung out on these pills. And the basketball coach of the varsity team when I got into high school hated me because he was one of my middle school PE teachers. And I didn't find this out until later, but he told the JV coaches to cut me because he didn't want me to be a part of the basketball program.
Wow.
And the JV coaches actually told me that the next year after he got fired. But I got cut from the JV team my freshman year. And it absolutely crushed me. Yeah, dude. And like, that's when I went from like basketball being my whole identity to like, all right, now I'm the drug guy. And I just kind of fell into that role. And then of course, like next year, next 3 years I was a captain of the basketball team, all 3 years after that. It still was a part of my life, but drugs had totally taken over. Academics had gone to the wayside. Everything was about drugs.
So you end up wrapping up high school, right?
Yeah.
And you went to a great high school, right? Charlotte Country Day?
Yeah.
Which is like a powerhouse basketball school, right? In North Carolina?
Not basketball. We're good at football.
Football?
Good football and lacrosse program. Basketball, we were in the same conference as Charlotte Christian, where Steph Curry went, Charlotte Latin, where Anthony Morrow went. We've had some pretty good talent come out of our conference. It's just we haven't had good teams. There were 2 guys on my team that played at Carolina and one that played at Southern Illinois. We were just never really good together.
Was it having any effect on like your relationship with the parents? Was it, were they onto you, or was it kind of?
At this time, everything was good. I skated by. I barely graduated high school. Go up to NC State for college, join a fraternity, and second week I'm there, this dude walks into my dorm room with a bottle of sealed OxyContin. It's 40 milligram Oxy, straight from the farm, and throws them on my bed. He's like, yeah, be careful with these things. They're really strong. And I had never seen them before, didn't know what they were. So it was like perfect timing. I think I had just run out of the pills that I brought up to school, and he hits me with these things, and my tolerance just skyrockets from there. He's bringing them to me, every week. I'm getting a sealed bottle of these things. I find a couple other people who are doctor shopping, and then all that comes crashing down 6 months later, and somebody tells me to go to the methadone clinic because I get sick for the first time, and it's like I'm gonna die.
How did it come crashing down? Was it like,
well, they
ran out, or did you get
in
trouble?
Got fired. The other 2 guys disappeared, and I'm like, I got this massive oxy habit, and it takes me freaking 300 something milligrams just to get out of bed in the morning, and so I call this dude that I grew up with back in Charlotte. He's like, oh yeah, just go to. I didn't even know what methadone was. He's like, go to the methadone clinic, you'll be fine. I go there, and like, I end up being on methadone for like 6 years. I fail out of school, meet a bunch of crazy people at the clinic, start doing a bunch of cocaine, fail out of school, move back to Charlotte, start working for the family business. That doesn't work out because I'm just a total wreck at this point. End up connecting with some old buddies that I used to run with in Charlotte. I start smoking crack. start doing black tar heroin, like in between. I'd go to the methadone clinic for a little bit, stop going, get on a bunch, start doing dope. It just got, my entire life was consumed with drug use all day
I can
long.
totally relate to that.
Yeah, I wasn't, and I had a baseline. I drank vodka, pretty much. I would drink vodka in those like black high gravity steel reserves. Those like when it got real bad.
You weren't like a pop off guy?
No, I drank. I just whatever was on sale. We used to drink. Sometimes we drink this stuff called Riva. It was like tasted like rubbing alcohol, dude. It was like $3 for a fifth. But yeah, I mean, I was a total wreck, and my family did a stage like a kind of an intervention. It wasn't like a formal intervention. They just backed me into a corner, like you're going to treatment. In like 2008, I go to a 28-day program in Charlotte, right outside of Charlotte, at the hospital, and I was there. I like weaseled my way out after 24 days. Thought I was never going to use again. Like, I mean, I would have bet my life on it. And, I'm smoking crack 2 weeks later. Did
you learn anything there? Did like anything,
Yeah, I learned about AA and, learned about recovery and, I was like gung-ho, man. I mean, I was like going to a couple meetings a day, and then I just ran into my old guys, and it was like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Next thing you know, I'm in the bathroom getting high. And
it talks about it in the big book, right? That moment when we'll be defenseless against the first drink.
Yeah, it was definitely a moment of powerlessness. And so yeah, I went on another like year and a half run, and that year and a half got pretty dark. I'd stay up for 2 or 3 days at a time, smoke crack till my body shut down, and I'd sleep until I got dope sick. I'd wake up, do a little dope, go back to sleep for a little bit, wake up, and then do it all over again. And it was awful. And so the end, I was at my dad's apartment and sitting on the couch. I'd been up for a couple of days. I'm doing my last little bit of dope. And this dude that was like an old family friend of ours that had like 25 years sober in AA knocks on the door. And this dude had been trying to 12-step me since I was 16. And I looked through the peephole. I sit back down. And then this little voice in my head was like, if you don't answer that door, you're going to die.
Wow.
And at this point, like, I mean, I had open sores all over my arms, like pretty much all over my body. I had a staph infection in my leg, weighed like 125 pounds. I mean, it was gross. I was in a cocaine psychosis. I thought there were bugs all up underneath my skin. I'd been in the hospital a couple times that week prior. And so I opened the door, and he's like, "You ready?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I guess." And I ended up down in Florida like 3 days later, and that was a wrap. I walked into my first treatment for 90 days.
Where'd you go?
I went to Wellness Resource Center. This is before Guardian existed, and it was a dual diagnosis program because they thought that there could be some underlying stuff there because of the cocaine psychosis that they didn't know what it was, and
we still think that about you.
Yeah, I know I'm a little weird, but I walked into my first meeting at Crossroads Club in Delray. And I was still like, still hadn't slept. And this is like after detox, like I'm still just like gone. And they called for Burning Desire at the beginning of the meeting, and my hand like shot up. And I just said, my name's Patrick. I'm an addict and I need help. And that was the first time in my entire life that I've ever asked anybody for help.
Yeah.
And these like dudes just like swarmed me. Because I mean,
Step one in.
I looked like hell, and they were just
That's
like,
step one in action, right?
yeah, hell yeah, man. And
I mean, a lot
two,
of
step one and step two, right there. I mean, these guys like just surrounded me,
yeah.
and I knew from that point on, like I was gonna be okay. I knew it was over, and I got a sponsor in AA. Did the old school AA big book steps. Like, dude had 20 years sober. He was a Jedi. Went through the steps while I was in treatment with him out on
Was that
Pat.
Jeeves?
No, it was not Jeej. It was a guy
Jeej?
named Derek. He was a man. He took me through the big book and supplemented some stuff out of the 12 and 12. It was great. I wrote a freaking killer, real deal inventory while I was because I was so raw and like so willing. It was just like, yeah, I just let it all out, man. And I just became this like sponge. Like I didn't sit out in the smoking pit in treatment. Like any little moment I had, I was in my room reading. Sat in the front row in the meetings. Tried to do service, put the chairs away. Tried to get to know people. Like, I wanted it all.
For me, like that piece of it, like the service piece, like just picking up chairs, like getting there early, setting up, like having, like a job in a group, like that was everything to me. And I think that's what really kind of, obviously you meet people and stuff, but when you can really like jump in like that, you really start to feel connected to it, and you really start to kind of, embody that step 12.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really cool. And I'm glad I had the sponsors over the years that I did that really pointed that out to me, that like you can do service right off the rip.
Yep.
Like you sitting in a meeting not getting high and causing havoc, you're doing service.
I even tell people, like, if you're in treatment, like just like
Yeah,
greeting that new person walking through the door and being like,
save their life.
100%.
It'd be the one thing that makes them feel safe enough to really open up and share.
And just think, I mean, if, where would we be if Bill Wilson had that attitude that he had to wait to be of service to someone else?
Yeah.
That is like the root of the 12-step fellowship.
Yeah.
It's find someone and help them. And that's exactly what he did.
And that probably helped me more than anything early on. So I went, when I got out of treatment, I moved into a sober living, and it was right down the street from an NA meeting that met every morning at 7 a.m. So I started going there every morning, and I was like, all right, well, I got the AA stuff. I read the big book like 5 times. I completed these or did the step work with my sponsor, did everything he told him to do. I've read all the AA, sanctioned literature. Let me try this. And then I found Jeej. And we went through the NA flat book, the step working guide. And then after that, we went through the ACOA yellow step working guide, because his old sponsor was this dude named Tony Allen, who wrote the laundry list and is considered to be one of the founders of ACA.
Wow.
So Jeej had a lot of knowledge and wisdom and experience with a lot of different step stuff. I learned a ton from him. But one of the things that I did in my early sobriety that really, really helped me was I would go, even when I was living in that halfway house, I would go back to the treatment center that I went to, and I would pick kids up in the morning and take them to that 7 a.m. meeting. And I got to meet like so many people that I never would have met. they were all like super motivated. Anybody that wants to go to a 7 a.m. meeting while they're in treatment, before a clinical day, like, they want recovery.
Yeah.
So I developed all these really cool relationships and got to sponsor a bunch of really awesome people through that. But that kept me out of my head. It kept me out of trouble. It was like, I worked a $9 an hour job as a valet at Boca Resort, and I went to meetings and gave people rides and sponsored dudes. That was all I did for my first year, and played basketball. Didn't worry about anything else. And
something to be said for that simplicity. No, I mean,
yeah,
what you have explained is exactly kind of like what I went through, like going and picking people up at the treatment center for meetings and just kind of like just living and breathing recovery, and kind of like almost, not that you didn't have responsibility, but it was just like low level stuff. And all you had to do is just focus on recovery.
Yeah.
Like some days I wish I could go back to that for a year.
Oh, man, it was the best. It was the best. I mean, there were some days where, I'd go to 3-4 meetings a day and enjoyed them, But yeah, so I did that. And then I had about 11 months sober, and I started working as a tech at a sober living that was was owned by some people that owned a treatment center. I worked there as a tech for a little bit, and then moved over to their treatment center called Immersion Recovery Center. No longer exists. It's a really awesome program though. But we I kind of worked my way up from, I went from tech to tech supervisor to case manager to, director of client services. And I worked, that was over about a 2.5 year period. And during that time, I just, again, I was like a sponge for recovery. I was constantly doing step work, taking people through step work, doing a ton of meditation, like reading all kinds of crazy spiritual literature in my free time that complemented all the other work that I was doing. I was still going to therapy, still giving a ton of people rides, and my network was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I started sitting in on these groups at this treatment center, in between my responsibilities as a case manager. And I would ask the therapist questions, and I would, say, hey, well, would you ever think about this? Or, and then they, sometimes they'd let me talk during the groups, and I'd share some of the meditation stuff or mindfulness stuff or spirituality stuff that I was learning. And eventually it got to a point where they were like, dude, you got to go back to school. You need to be a counselor. And I didn't want to do it. And then one morning, this girl, the woman that was in my home group, Sammy, she's freaking best. She literally kept asking me, like, you sign up for school yet? You sign up for school yet? You sign up for school yet? And I was like, just avoiding it, putting it off. She got in my car one morning after my home group and was like, come on, we're going to your house. If you won't do it, I'm going to do it for you. And she got on my freaking computer and signed me up for my addiction counseling classes.
Wow.
And I mean, to the point where she was like, give me your credit card. Like, and she signed me up for these classes, and I started taking them, and did all my supervision hours at Delray Recovery Center. And then when I got my certification, I had a meeting with Guardian, and it was like right after they started out. It was at that period of time. It was only an IOP. They had a probably 25-person census. They had a clinical director and 3 other counselors.
Wow.
And that was it. And they hired me as their 4th counselor, fresh out of school. And they would give me 1 client at a time. At this point in time, Sean Ryan was the clinical director. The therapists were a woman named Faye Ann, Amanda, who's still there, and Matt.
Matt Navratil.
Yep. Yeah, and they like took me under their wings, and they'd give me one client at a time. I'd go in and I'd have a session, and then I'd come out and I'd immediately go into supervision with one of the other therapists, and I'd dissect my session. And after 6 months, they gave me 2, and then kind of build up, and then they opened Boca Detox, and then they told me that, hey, we're going to open this 12-step immersion program, and we're thinking about moving you over there. So I was like all for it, because I'm like a huge step dude, and I'm like, this is freaking awesome. This is like the stuff I'm doing anyway.
Yeah.
And it was cool because I had like the Plymouth House step model was, classic AA big book stuff, which I was familiar with and had tons of experience with. But I also had, the stuff that I had learned from NA, stuff that I learned from ACOA, and all the mindfulness and meditation stuff. So I kind of added another level or another layer of step stuff to the currently existing Plymouth House stuff. So when we first started, well, actually, they had another therapist there for a couple months before I was able to move from Guardian over to Immersion. But in the beginning, we had one house with 12 dudes in it, and it was me and John Burrow and Eric Gerard. So we had 12 guys and 3 therapists in a house, and it was like the coolest thing.
That's a great client staff ratio.
We had a ton of fun. A lot of those dudes are still around. A lot of them, work for freaking Immersion and Guardian now. And then I got to be a part of the growth of the Immersion program. And
I remember right in the original building.
Yeah, it was freaking awesome. That's how I met you. And I was the Cleveland.
Probably when you look back at it, one of the more pivotal moments in your life.
It was.
The day you met me.
Yeah, you've been the target of lots of my laughter over the years. But yeah, man, it was like I'm like so grateful for having been part of the Guardian and Immersion family, and I learned so much from so many of my mentors and supervisors during the time that I was there. And then I just I had an opportunity to go out on my own, and I took it, but I still stayed connected with Immersion. I did a lot of groups there after I left my like primary therapist position. So I was still, I was connected with them until the day that I left Florida.
And you're still connected, with the people. It's not.
Yeah, and I was there. I was down there this weekend, and I ran a group on Monday.
That's what I love about it. It's even though it's grown and it's it's gotten bigger, and it still has this family feel to it. That once you're a part of it, you're always a part of it, and it's just a beautiful thing.
It's a great culture, I mean, they've done a really good job of cultivating the culture and taking care of their people. And it's like a big happy family. Everybody hangs out outside of work. Everybody's friends and they're close. Yeah. They support each other in their own recovery processes. They hit meetings together. It's just.
And a lot of times you go, when you go back to, you're seeing the same people, right? It's not this huge, a lot of treatment centers, it's this huge constant turnover of staff. Like I still see people there that I saw on the first day.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what happens when you have a solid culture, and people are passionate about what they do and they get rewarded for it. And when you're working with your friends, it's hard not to feel that sense of community, and the fact that the treatment model works is huge too. The fact that people get better at Immersion, and that what you're doing and what you're a part of is actually valuable and you're seeing these people change, and they're staying in the community, and they're coming back for alumni stuff, and they want to work for the organization. I mean, there's a ton of people that work, for Immersion now that were several of them I worked with when they came through Immersion.
Yeah. Kenny, Wolcott, Veronica.
Yep. Yeah.
There's a ton. What advice would you give to someone that's struggling? If you were sitting in front of someone right now, what advice would you give them?
Surrender. I was talking about this on Monday in group. The most successful people that I've ever seen, and when I say successful, I'm not talking about people that have been able to like put together time or remain abstinent. I'm talking about people that thrive in life after they get sober are the ones that came in and just said, I'll do whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I look at our minds like a GPS. I talk about this all the time, but it's we have like a mind, like the software system of a GPS. We got a bunch of information that gives us this map of how to orient ourselves and how to move in our life. Unfortunately for us, some of those pieces of the map are missing. Some of them have inaccurate information, and we take some of those things as truth, or we don't know where we're going, we don't know where we are. So I was very lucky that I was at such a point of despair in early recovery that I just took my map and I threw it out the window. And I was like, I found people that looked like they knew where they were and where they were going, and their maps were put together. And I was like, can I use your map? And I would just use theirs to start drawing mine. And over time, you'll figure out where the hell you are and where you're going. But the crazy thing is if you don't fully surrender, all it takes is one bad turn or one little glitch in your operating system, or one little tiny piece of the map missing, and you're walking off a cliff, or
you're driving into the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah, that, or it's like,
so you can take that little piece I just threw in there and add that to your analogy.
Yeah, I probably won't do that.
Dude, that's great. Like, you're talking about you
probably heard that from me. I already said that.
No, like, if I'm going to be honest, I was ready to start snoring because the beginning of that story was
whatever.
Like, if I had to sit through that,
you're like one of those guys that like constantly, tells people that how to get from Delray Beach to Boston, but it includes you driving to LA and then driving back across the country to Boston, but nobody can tell you anything because you already know how to get there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Plus, look who I'm married to. It's
yeah.
Just a Michael Isaac thing.
Way better map than you.
I don't know. I'd be like, I'm like a treasure hunter. I could follow a map to the treasure.
Yeah. Good.
Oh man. Well, we are just about out of time. Thank you for being such a good friend. I know I always enjoy when our families get together and can hang out and just kind of.
Yeah, I can't wait for the summer for our annual beach trip.
And we're definitely adding bowling to the agenda.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to buy a ball.
Yeah, that's what you would like. You can't just see, my game is at the level where I can just show up.
Because I'll use yours.
I can just show up, grab any rock in the bin, and roll it down the alley. And
you're already making excuses. I can hear it in your voice.
No, you were looking to buy like a new ball and bring it with you, and
that's going to be your excuse when you show up unprepared and get smoked. You're going to be like, oh, you got a ball. I'm using a, This is on record.
You're going down.
Yeah. You should.
It's probably like, if I'm going to project the score, 190 to 140.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna bowl more than a 200. So you
No,
better
you
start.
ain't.
You better start practicing.
I'll be doing just like when you said you were the greatest shooter around,
I didn't.
and I witnessed you get lit up for 40 as you went 0 for 32 from the field,
That's because
and
you
I was
got
in
bad
and I was in the stand
gym.
yelling overrated.
I know. See, you're such a great friend. Like I missed the first shot, and you start chanting overrated and bring my morale down.
But that's what pros do. The pros fight through that.
Yeah, yeah.
Where you, it jammed you up.
That's why I'm not a pro. That's why I was a league at the JCC. A bunch of old 40-year-old dudes.
That's why I fizzled out after high school.
Yeah.
Well, I love you and thank you so much.
I love you
For
too, man. Thanks for asking me to do this.
Awesome. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week.